Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to Awakening to the Magic of the Menstrual Cycle. I have the beautiful Miss Denell. Can you say your last name for me, Denell?
Yes, Denell Naraki, or I go by Denell Barbara, which is my middle name.
Beautiful. So Denell is the founder of Cervical Wellness, and I just want to say that Denell has this really powerful flow of creativity and clarity moving through her channel like so powerfully right now, and I just have been like loving following her on Instagram, and everything that she has been producing has just been amazing. So I'm really excited and grateful to have her on the show today.
Thank you, Angel. It's such an honor to be here. I've loved having you in the virtual community, seeing your IG handle pop up. It's fun.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love for you to kind of introduce the work that you do and what cervical wellness is for anyone who's not familiar with you and your work.
Yeah, I'd love to. So my company is called Cervical Wellness, and it is a education platform for women who are seeking the self-healing path. My work originally and has tended to focus on women who are reversing abnormal pap smears on their own. So women who have HPV and cervical dysplasia, who feel very uninspired and lackluster by contemporary treatment options like surgical procedures, or even receiving the HPV vaccine, which is a treatment option that they give for people with HPV. And so cervical wellness started as this way for us with female bodies to learn about what the cervix is, what it means to be a keeper of the cervix, and how we can tend to our body so that it would heal and regenerate naturally on its own without needing any sort of outside intervention. And this comes from my own experience of having healed and reversed 7 years of abnormal pap smears. And more recently, Cervical Wellness is evolving into a platform just for educating around body sovereignty and how we can reclaim our health and our wellness for ourselves, and not seeking any outside authority to tell us what we need to do for ourselves, but really tapping into that inner wisdom, listening to the voice of our body, and doing what we need to do for ourselves on behalf of ourselves to create the quality of life, the quality of health and wellness and vitality that we desire in our lives. And really, I believe, and I know based upon how many women I've spoken to over the years and all the clients that I've had, that it is possible for everybody if we choose. So that's cervical wellness in a nutshell. I'm really about reclaiming our bodies, reclaiming who we are, and not being afraid to own it. Own this body, own this life, own who we are.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I love just those two words together, body sovereignty, because that is so very needed on the planet right now, and especially in our modern day civilization, when we have kind of just been programmed, more or less, raised into thinking that, you know, doctors know best and that we should just listen to everything that they say. And I just want to say that I don't think like badly of doctors necessarily. I know that there's doctors in the field that are genuinely coming from their heart and really do want to help people. And this is an area that has just needed reforming so badly for a long time, especially with, you know, big pharma just kind of going crazy over the last 10 or 20 years. And I'm just really grateful to have women like yourself who are advocates of other women, you know, doing the work, doing their own research, and taking their healing into their own hands. Because anybody who truly wants to heal, like really heal, and not just get a quick fix, like a pill or a surgery or something, has to understand that it's their responsibility, their health. And I think for a lot of people who haven't been exposed to other options, empowering them to know that they have control over their own health, it's really refreshing to see people like yourself who are such a powerful embodiment of body sovereignty, and to see people who have had, you know, diagnosis and successfully healed themselves of things that maybe a doctor wouldn't necessarily say that they could heal themselves from. So I really appreciate having you on the planet.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that reflection. You know, this comes from really actually anger. Like my drive comes from this just deep sense of injustice, and yeah, especially given my own history of having had 7 years of HPV and cervical dysplasia, and my doctor's literally telling me, you're going to get cancer, and because you don't listen to us, that's what's going to happen to you. And I decided that wasn't going to be true. And so it's scary to go against the grain, and it's scary to not listen to that authority. And especially when your friends and family are like, what are you doing? You need to listen to them. So that reflection, it takes courage and bravery, but I don't see any other way.
Yeah, it definitely takes quite a bit of courage. I just had my own experience with the establishment recently in a really small way. I personally have, you know, been on the path of body sovereignty for a good 10 years now. And so I haven't really gone to the doctor very much, or just like interfaced with that establishment at all. And I actually became really polarized against it, which I know a lot of people are, because, you know, for good reason. There's been a lot of mistreatment and fear that gets instilled in the way that a lot of it is presented to people. And I just kind of like went through my own little experience of it, not having gone to the doctor for a long time. I got a bite on my hand recently, and it was a cat bite actually, and it started to swell, and I knew that it was becoming infected. And my initial instinct was to just let my body do its thing and clean it and take care of it, and you know, trust that my body was going to fix it on its own. And a really interesting thing happened where I just chose to go get some antibiotics for it instead of struggling with it and not knowing exactly what could happen. And I just was watching my own thoughts while I was going through that process, and just like, it was just a little bite, but there was a good amount of fear thought forms that I experienced during that. And I was kind of nervous going in there, and there was, you know, some things that they suggested to me that I said no to, because I knew that all I needed was the antibiotics. But just to experience that level of vulnerability for myself, not being an expert on bites and that type of thing, it kind of like frightened me a little bit, and really made me feel so much more for people who are in a vulnerable space for their health, and how easily influenced you are when you are in that vulnerable space, and how it's so important to have somebody that you trust that really cares about your well-being and doesn't just want to give you a bunch of vaccinations and pills and whatever because they're just following the books and not actually listening to their own guidance about it. And yeah, it just was an interesting experience for me. My hand is all better, by the way.
Good.
And
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that little bit, that like, I'm really grateful for modern medicine, and that's not the way to heal. it's the way to, you know, deal with an emergency or a injury or an accident or something. But if you have like a chronic illness or most things, that's not what's going to bring you the healing.
Yeah.
And
yeah, well, the Western medicine, they're in the business of treatment. They're not in the business of healing. And treatment is like, I don't know the definition off the top of my head, but treatment is the combating of an illness or disease. And if you look at the language that Western medicine uses surrounding the human body, it is very much a war against. That's why we have like a war against cancer, a war against heart disease, whatever. But the definition of healing is, again, I don't know this verbatim, but the definition of healing is bringing back into balance, bringing that which was out of balance back into balance. And so for me and my perspective is like, we need to change the language around how we are working with the human body, because the mind-body connection is so deep and so strong. And this vulnerability that you're speaking about comes from this just basic lack of knowledge, lack of education. You know, we don't learn about the human body. Maybe we might learn about some of the systems or how it works in maybe one class in high school, but the fear and vulnerability comes from this place of just not having the information. And when we have the information and we start to learn and recognize and know that, oh my gosh, the human body is actually this like beautiful, miraculous, biochemical,
miracle.
Sorry?
A miracle.
It is a miracle that it regenerates and heals. And when we tend to it and love it, it can heal. In your circumstance, it's different, because when you have an infection, that's like a foreign pathogen entity, a bacteria coming into your bloodstream, and that can be dangerous. But for most other conditions that are oncoming over a long period of time, or even, you know, something quick that happens, like I don't know, like a cyst that emerges or whatnot, that the body is sending us a sign, is sending us like a little message, being like, we need to look here, we need to look at what's going on here. And so, yeah, like my perspective is that, you know, with doctors, they know not what they do. They do take a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, but they are in this very logical mechanism where it's like, if A is presenting, then we go to B, and then we go to C. And it doesn't matter the unique life of anybody. It doesn't matter what their, you know, lifestyle is or what has happened in their life in the past. It's just like you fit them into this little box. And we're not linear beings, we're dynamic. And I think that's where allopathic medicine is falling short. But again, this is just all my opinion.
No, I completely agree. And that makes me think about, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in a previous interview or not, but I studied Ayurveda in India, and one of the pieces that really rang true for me that differentiated an Ayurvedic doctor from an allopathic doctor was the fact that an Ayurvedic doctor understands exactly what you were talking about, that psychosomatic relationship between the mind and the body. And like an Ayurvedic doctor would look at you and your diagnosis, and they would consider how strong your mind is in the moment, and they would tailor whatever they say to you about your condition to where your mind is at.
Wow.
They wouldn't say, oh, you have cancer and you're going to die in 4 months. If they knew that you weren't mentally strong enough, they would maybe like withhold some stuff or word it differently, because they understand how powerful your mind is on your body. And I think that's one of the things that that, like you said, allopathic medicine kind of falls short on, because from my understanding, that model looks at a human being just as a physical body, basically. And like you said, just kind of like cookie cutter, treats everybody. And that's another thing that I love about Ayurveda is they look at each person individually and their whole life history, which I'm sure you understand from your work too. And there's so many different factors that get considered when looking at a person. Like, another thing that I found awesome was, if you went to an Ayurvedic doctor, they're going to ask you about your whole life. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't necessarily be out of line for an Ayurvedic doctor to tell you what's actually wrong with your life is the job that you have. Mm-hmm. That's really unhealthy for you or stressful, because so often we can look at a physical ailment and want to focus on that and try to fix that one thing, when really the root could totally not be physical. It could be emotional. And I think it's really important to really begin to look at us as multidimensional beings that we are, and not just physical.
Yes, yes, I'm so glad you brought that up, because in my work with HPV and cervical dysplasia, excuse me, you know, I receive hundreds, probably at this point, like thousands of messages from women who are just so terrified with this diagnosis, and which is understandable. When you receive something, you say somebody tells you that something's wrong, of course we get afraid. But when I began to talk to them and I began to share with them, well, it's not that your body isn't mad at you. There's nothing wrong with your body. Like, let's look at these underlying factors behind, like, why your body is perhaps susceptible to this virus, or why your body is producing these abnormal cells. And 9.9 times out of 10, it generally has to do with the psychosomatic connection, or unhealed trauma, or like trauma that has been repressed, sexual trauma, or personal beliefs around one's body and one's female body, one's sexuality, and all of these different layers that then just manifest itself on the physical, of leading us to be susceptible to HPV viral infection, or leading the cervix to produce these abnormal cells, which, again, I keep coming back to this phrase, but it's like the voice of our body. It's a message from our body saying, hey, there is an imbalance here, and it's not me, it's not the body, it's in our life. And the only way I know how, if this is the voice of the body would say, the only way I know how to tell you this is by creating something wrong. Because when something's wrong, we actually pay attention. But when nothing's wrong, we don't pay attention. So yeah, I really appreciate what you shared about the Ayurvedic doctors. I didn't know that they will tailor how they speak and what they say to their patients. And that makes sense, because I mean, everybody on the summit might have already heard the phrase that, you know, speaking is spelling, we're casting spells. And you know, allopathic medicine tends to cast pretty intense negative spells on people. And, you know, the placebo and nocebo effect are real, meaning, like, if someone believes that they're going to heal, they probably will heal. But if someone believes that they're going to get sick and die, they're more likely to get sick and die. And yeah, I'm really grateful that these conversations are being had, and more of us in our generation are waking up to the reality of the power of our word, the power of our mind-body connection, and that our bodies are amazing miracles.
They definitely are. It feels really good to connect with other people who are awake to that. And that's something that I talk about with people often also, is being able to read the language of your body, because it doesn't speak to you in words. It speaks to you in patterns and sensations and symptoms. And when you reframe it, I think that alone takes a good amount of the stigma and fear off of it. When you just start looking at your body and reading its feedback as a language, as it communicating to you, instead of something being wrong, that totally, like, opens up a whole new dimension of thinking. And I think that piece alone can be so empowering when you can look at your body like a friend that's trying to talk to you, and that's amazing and always doing everything it can to bring itself back into perfect harmony and homeostasis. All we have to do is support it and get out of the way.
One thing that's unfortunate is that in modern medicine, it is very common for women to not be believed that something is wrong in their body, even when their intuitive sense is that there is something happening. So we, with female bodies, have a very deep connection to our inner knowing. It's just inherent to who we are. And oftentimes we tend to not believe ourselves that something is amiss, or not believe that we know what is happening. So we go to these authority figures and we say something is happening or something is wrong. And there is a long history of women being called hysterical, or that they're crazy, or that they don't know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, this has led to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of women, over the last 100 years to have serious complications or die early deaths. And I know I'm in conversation with some women of color right now, and this is very prevalent for women with Black bodies who go in, for childbirth or complications with their body, and they're not believed, or they're told that what they know to be true for themselves is not actually true. And it is my hope and my prayer that this way of being in allopathic medicine does change. And especially in it. I just wanted to share that because for me in this conversation. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, you bring up a really good point. And I think it goes even broader than just like intuiting what's going on with your body. I personally have experienced this, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that we're on the planet together and we have mirrors and other people around us, because it is a thing to not necessarily trust what your intuition is telling you, especially depending on the environment that you're in. And I personally have done this in the past where my intuition was telling me something for a while, and either if it was me or somebody else, kind of like, oh, what is that term? Gaslighting? Yeah, just kind of like downplaying it and making it out to be nothing, when in reality, your intuition is on point and it's totally right about whatever it's talking about. And if you're not around an environment or people that are really in integrity and helping you be in your own truth, it can be so easy to do that to ourselves, to just keep downplaying it and continue to tolerate things that we're getting clear signals aren't good for us, but we don't necessarily have anybody around us to like validate and remind us to trust ourselves and remember that our intuition is solid, and our emotions and whatever feedback we're getting from the body, whether it be physical or emotional, is there for a reason. It's talking to you, and you need to listen to it, or else, suppressing it is just going to create an even bigger wound for you to later have to come back to and forgive yourself for not listening to yourself when you were getting the feedback,
Yeah, I feel like this is what we're relearning, because again, we've been taught for a very long time that this intuition, this inner knowing, is incorrect, that we have to seek outside of ourselves. And yeah, it's time. I feel like it's more and more of us are remembering and reclaiming this power that we have to discern what is right for us, to know what we are feeling. and to act from there. Huh. That, I think, is the revolution. That's just that's my opinion. All these are my opinions, but yeah.
Well, obviously I really resonate with all of your opinions, so.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay, so I want to talk about the cervix, honestly. Yeah. So when I was growing up, I had a random male doctor give me my pelvic exam, which, I mean, I was too young to know any better, but it didn't feel good to me to just have a stranger put his fingers inside of me. Yeah. And I went like a little bit when I started to get on birth control and started to become sexually active. And I remember the last pap smear that I got came back with some sort of abnormalities. And I'm just so grateful that I came into this incarnation and this body already hardwired to be sovereign and kind of not listen to the rules and regulations of the world. And I chose not to go back into the doctor because I intuitively knew that it was that the energy of that system trying to kind of like suck me in and give me all of these like fearful terminologies and tell me whatever they want to tell me and do whatever surgeries and whatever they wanted to do. I just chose not to go in. And I just chose not to play in that system and believe that I have sovereignty over my body, and whatever it is, it's an imbalance in that moment and it can clear up on its own if I just take care of myself. And also, I would love for you to just explain what cervical dysplasia is for people who aren't familiar with that term.
Yeah, so cervical dysplasia is really just like a fancy term, a fancy, confusing term that means abnormal cells on the cervix. So the cervix, I'll just go into a little bit about the anatomy and physiology of the cervix because people might not know what the cervix is or only think about the cervix in relation to childbirth. So the cervix is actually a part of the uterus. It is considered the neck of the uterus, and it is the part of the uterus that is exposed in the vaginal canal. So like when you go in for a pelvic exam, when they put the speculum in, they are actually peering at the face of the cervix, which is the part of the cervix that's exposed in the vaginal canal. But the cervix is actually pretty thick. It goes up in, into the pelvis several inches until you get into the womb cavity, the womb temple. So the part of the cervix that I work with in my work with cervical wellness is the face of the cervix. So the part of the cervix that is exposed in the vaginal canal. And the cervix has a face. So the face of the cervix also has a mouth, which is the cervical os, which is the birth canal. So when you look at a cervix, there's like a little hole, which goes in, like if you follow that canal, it goes into the uterus. So the cervix has a face, the cervix has a mouth. I like to say that the cervix is really just like another one of you, another one of us, just like down below. And so cervical dysplasia arises right around the outside of the cervical os of the mouth. So usually the dysplasic cells emerge either right on the inside of the cervical canal and coming out to the face of the cervix, and depending on the grade of cervical dysplasia determines like how much of the face of the cervix has these dysplasic cells. But another thing I want to explain to all the viewers is that why these cells become abnormal here is because these cells are actually going through a transformation. They are in a part of the cervix called the transformation zone, which is also in a fancy terminology called the squamo-columnar junction. And what is happening on this part of the face of the cervix is that, in the inside of the cervical canal, all of the cells on like the very outside of the cervix, so like not like in the inner meat, but on the very surface level, They are called columnar cells. They're very long, skinny type of cells. And the cervix has this constant flow outward of cellular regeneration, meaning all the cells from the inside of the cervical canal, they literally flow out and then like come to the face of the cervix. So I like to think of the cervix as this beautiful mandala of just like outward flowing regeneration. So these long columnar cells, which start on the inside of the cervical canal, as they travel through the canal into the cervical os and like to the face, they change shape. They change from these long, skinny columnar cells to, once they get to the face, these short, fat, squamous cells. So they start really long, skinny, and as they change, they kind of shrink and become short, fat cells. Now, when they are in that transition from long, skinny cells to short, fat cells, they are going through a metamorphosis, and they are very susceptible to damage or harm or a viral infection. And that transformation happens right on the outside of the cervical os, right where the canal kind of meets the face. And when that transformation doesn't occur in like a healthy way or in a way that would produce, strong new squamous cells, they become abnormal. And that's why when they do a pap smear and they do like a superficial scrape of those cells and they come back showing, oh, these cells are abnormal, you get diagnosed with cervical dysplasia. In essence, it just means that the cervix is not transforming the cells in a way that creates strong, healthy cells. But again, that doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's just an indication that there's something happening, an energetic imbalance. But I just wanted to share that with the listeners because, again, as I mentioned earlier, like having information, having knowledge, I feel kind of lessens the fear around what is happening. And when we can know like, oh, my cervix regenerates and is always producing new cells, and just right now, right now these cells are, transforming abnormally, that doesn't mean they're permanent. That the trick to reversing cervical dysplasia is not getting rid of the cells that are already abnormal, because the cervix will, through its own power, just kind of eliminate those cells through its process of regeneration. The trick is to support the body to, in the future, or in the coming future, not in the now, but what we're moving towards, to produce new healthy cells, to have them transform in a way that is quote normal, and then over time the abnormal cells go away and the cervix is healthy and healed.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
As I have been following your work and thinking back on that one pap smear that came back abnormal that I just chose not ever to go back to the doctor from, that was probably exactly what I was experiencing with cervical dysplasia. And wow, that's so incredible to learn that it's going through this metamorphosis. That's the more that you learn about the body, the more I'm just like, oh my God, it's freaking amazing. How am I in this? How is this possible?
Yeah, well, and the female body, even, the female body is incredible, always changing, always metamorphosizing, always transforming. It's pretty amazing. I know you can relate to that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that. Knowledge is totally power. And I think that, so kind of like what I was getting out of what you were saying was, you just basically want to support your overall well-being to be the healthiest person that you can be, so that the internal processes are all healthy on their own, right?
Yes. Yes, that when we can support our whole body, we are supporting our cervix. One thing I teach in cervical wellness is that really cervix is an indicator of like our whole body wellness, because there are many different body systems that are interconnected to the cervix, like the nervous system or the vascular system, like our blood, especially because the female pelvis is deeply influenced by our blood, which is also influenced by our liver health, but which is also influenced by our digestion. So cervix really guides us to living our most well and healthy life. And when we choose to follow the call of the cervix on what I call our cervical healing journey, it will guide us to change things, to be healthy, to be well, to be vibrant, to be vital. And yeah, she really makes it known when something is amiss in our body. Yeah.
Yes, especially if you're listening, paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And, then I've had many clients or people who've reached out being like, oh my gosh, well, what about this person who was like 27 who just died of cervical cancer? And, what I have to say to that is, one, did she follow, allopathic treatment? It's pretty well documented that chemotherapy and radiation actually cause grave harm on the body, and the cancer isn't what kills them. It's the treatments. So did she follow that treatment protocol? What was surrounding her life? What was, you mentioned before, stress and jobs and relationships? Is there unhealed trauma? What is her inner world like? There are so many different factors that, in my mind, it's not the cervical cancer that would kill someone. It is the multi-dimensional life experience that, when not addressed and when just submitted to the will of poison medicine, which what chemotherapy and radiation is, can lead the body to not be able to function anymore. And so for the people who are watching, if you have people in your life who have had cervical cancer or who have died from this, I imagine this can be triggering, but I invite you to just consider, was there more behind the veil that perhaps wasn't being addressed? And, how can we learn the lessons for our own life for the future? So I wanted to put that out there too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really beautiful point. And I think that's another piece that it's really useful to kind of back up a little bit and look at life from that multidimensional perspective and from a soul perspective, because I mean, death is just leaving the body. We don't just cease to exist. We just are not in our body anymore. And it's a really big deal for other human beings who are still in this physical reality. And, I mean, there's a realness to it in our physical reality where we're focused right now. And there's always more going on behind the veil, like you said. And who knows what that soul chose to come into physical form to experience. Oftentimes when people leave for seemingly devastating reasons, I personally believe that oftentimes they're in agreement to help get a really important lesson to everyone else that's still alive. And yeah, I think it's all of this can be potentially triggering and controversial, but it's really important that we're talking about this right now, because there's so much imbalance and polarization on both sides of the spectrum. I think that it's important to instill body sovereignty in everyone and know that modern day medicine has its place. And also, you are sovereign in your body, and it's your decision what goes on with your health. And to be able to kind of come at whatever you're dealing with health-wise from all angles and empower yourself with the information and knowing that your body is your friend and it is working with you and it wants to heal and help you. And sometimes there is some medical intervention that can be necessary and can be helpful and appropriate. And that's not all of it. You still have to do all the things to help your own healing journey. And that's what the gift is in your healing journey. That's like, you're a beautiful embodiment of that, because if you wouldn't have had those diagnoses, you wouldn't have gone on this amazing, rewarding journey of healing yourself and just loading on all of these incredible, empowering tools and information to share with the rest of the world. Like, I believe that you probably see that as a gift now in your life that gave you a lot, because you were able to alchemize it and transmute it into something of value for yourself and others, right?
Yes, actually, I I often recently especially have been thanking my lucky stars to have had this diagnosis. I mean, it was terrible at the time. Before I decided I was going to heal myself, I was, went through insane shame spirals and hating my body and grief and depression and anxiety. But now I see that it was a higher calling. Like, my body was saying, you must know about this. You must learn this. It's kind of like what you referenced about when someone dies, like, what is the lesson that they are teaching to the living?
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it was like something had to go seriously wrong in my body for many years for me to learn the lessons that I needed to learn to then be able to be who I am today, and sharing this information and being a voice for the cervix and a voice for the female body. And I have had many clients who, through their healing journey of us working together, and then they reverse their diagnosis, and then I check in with them 6 months, a year later, and they're like, Denell, I am so happy this happened to me, because it's a funny thing to say, but they're like, I'm so happy this happened to me because my life is so amazing now, or I feel so good in my body, or I feel so strong. I feel like my voice is strong. I feel like I can take care of myself. And I didn't feel that before. I didn't know this was possible for me before. And, it's like, unfortunately, things tend to not be really worth it if they're just kind of handed to us on a silver platter. We don't really acknowledge or value things that are just given to us freely. That's a human tendency. It's like when we have to work for something and we have to really face parts of ourselves that maybe we don't want to face, but we do it, and we do the work, and we do what we need to do, and then we come out the other side successful in whatever way that looks like for us. We tend to value it more. And I know for me, I value my health more than I ever would have. I value my body. I value how I feel, how I walk and be in the world. And cervix 100% guided me to this. I love my cervix. I'm so grateful that she became really angry.
That's awesome. You probably have one of the happiest cervix on the planet.
Oh, maybe. My doctors, I do go in for pap smears. I do go get checked, because it is important to, people have different opinions, but I like to go in and like assert my authority, be like, no, this is how the pap smear is going to go. I like that sort of experience. I'm a Taurus rising, so I get really into blocking heads with people anyway. But, when I do have my cervix looked at, or when I look at my own cervix, she does look very happy, very pink, very perky, and that's not how it used to be. So, yeah. And if you haven't looked at your cervix before, I highly recommend and invite all of us to have an experience of looking at our own cervix, either when you're in the doctor's office, ask for a hand mirror, or you can buy your own speculum and get a light and look at your cervix. It's really powerful.
That makes you know Chloe Skurlock?
Yes, I love her.
Yeah, she's this. You'll see her in this series too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, she does the Cervix portrait party.
Yeah, that's what was just making me think of when she first told me that. I was like, whoa,
Yes,
that's like
yes.
out there. But after like talking with you about this, I'm like, okay, I totally get it. And I kind of want to look at mine.
Oh, do I actually went to an event in February in LA where we looked at each other's cervixes, and like it was called Take Back the Speculum with a woman named Pamela. She's in Bodywork LA on Instagram. But yeah, like there was like 20 women and we all had speculums and we were all checking out each other's cervixes. It was the most empowering, like, we are so amazing experience. I highly recommend it.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
So I just want to reiterate the potential of each individual's healing, because I mean, I personally feel like we choose to come to Earth and be humans for all of this work, for all of this exploration, for these opportunities to transform. We didn't come here for it to just be, you know, handed to us and easy all the time, because I'm pretty sure we're all badass and would get bored really quickly if it was easy like that. And that is, I personally see that as like the main purpose behind most challenges and traumatic experiences, is it gives us a ground for alchemy. Like you can take your trauma and your struggles and your challenges and do the inner work and work on it and turn it into gold. And if you didn't have that substance of challenge or trauma, you would have nothing to turn into gold. And it's that journey of alchemizing it within ourselves that really produces the most bright, beautiful, empowered, embodied human being, which is what all of us want. And I just think that especially when you kind of like come to the other side of having healed it, I'm sure it probably is. I know it's a little bit easier said than done, but having people like yourself who have gone through the journey and been through all of the shadow work and the darkness and all of the shame and guilt and confusion and all of that, and to like come out of it and just be so freaking amazing, is like, that's it. I think like that's what we're here to do, is do it on ourselves and be like, hey, I did it, you can do it too.
Yes, exactly. I love the metaphor of alchemy, like turning it into gold. I heard a quote, it's like turning shit into gold. Like that's basically what the healing journey is. And yeah, I'm honored to be able to be a voice and an example that for this particular healing journey that it is possible. And that is one of the biggest reflections I receive from people in my emails or Instagram, is like, wow, I didn't know it was possible until like you shared your story. And so that is the power of sharing our stories as well. It's important that we have these conversations and share our stories and you know, bring a different viewpoint than what is told to us in media or, you know, school or whatnot. That when we share ourselves and we share what we've gone through, what we've been through, that we then open the doorways for others to be in those possibilities as well.
Definitely. Yeah. It's a really exciting time to be alive on the planet.
Totally. It's like a roller coaster, really. I'm like, I feel like, woo, it's going up and down.
I also want to add that I think another one of the main purposes of the challenges and traumatic experiences that we have is that you get like thrusted into the unknown. And if you didn't already have a relationship cultivated with whatever spirituality is to you, a higher power, just like believing in some sort of divine energy, that's also what this type of experience gives you. Because even with all of the tools, even with the allopathic medicine that you have to help you, and the homeopathic amazingness that you have to help you heal, and support from everyone, you're still like, you don't know. And you're always like put into this place where you just have to like really come down and like surrender and to trust in yourself, that you're being held and guided, especially when you're in that space of like overwhelm. Let's say maybe like you just got a diagnosis and now you're like being flooded with all of the information to try and empower yourself. That space could be like extremely overwhelming. And to come back down to trusting that you're going to make it through whatever the solutions are for you, you're going to be divinely guided to, and to just come back to that space of trusting in something bigger than yourself, and knowing that that is also inside of you to lead you through this path of challenge and unknown. That like really being able to cultivate a deep, strong relationship with source, God, spirit, whatever it is that you believe in. That alone, like, that's another one of the amazing things, is when you make it through the other side of the journey and you can like experience the actual healing after you've really cultivated that deep relationship with whatever it is that you believe in, and you make it through something that you had no idea how you were going to make it through, and you do it, you kind of really start to feel like you can make it through anything. There's something that's going to carry you through it, and you're freaking strong and powerful, and life is way more magical, and miracles are way more possible than what we're led to believe normally.
Yeah. So well said. So well said. Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to ask you, for anybody who's like new to like the cervix journey and that whole part of their body, because there's a lot more focus on the womb, I think, and like the yoni, vagina specifically. There's not quite as much attention being put on the cervix like you're bringing to the table. And I think that's a part of the body that kind of like gets overlooked because of the other parts. So I just wonder if like you have any advice for anybody who wants to connect more with their cervix, what you think that they could do.
Yeah, so there are two things that people can start to do right now. One thing you can do actually in this moment, and that is you can close your eyes and you can visualize like a stone falling through water through your central channel of your body, and just bring your awareness down to your cervix, like the lowest part of your pelvis. And what we're doing here when we're bringing our awareness down here is that we are actually activating our vagus nerve, which is it's considered the God pathway in the body, but one of the 12 cranial nerves that innervates most of our major organs. So when we bring our awareness to our cervix and embody our cervix, and I like to say like take a seat into our throne, because the cervix to me is like the queen of our body. When we just like rest in our cervix, oftentimes we're very up here, we're like, oh, we're, in our head, or we can be in our heart. But when we really just bring our attention and our awareness and our embodiment down even deeper than the womb, just like as low as you can go, that action, inner action in of itself can bring so much inner guidance, can help release emotion, can help release energy. I do this when I'm in line at the grocery store. I do this when I'm sitting in traffic. just any moment that I can remember to deeply embody my cervix is practicing connection. Because again, as you mentioned, oftentimes maybe we're just like, people say, oh, connect to your womb, and the womb space is a beautiful place to be connected to. But what I invite us to do is go a little deeper, like just a little deeper. And it's scary because it's dark and you don't know what's going on in there. So that's one. That's like an internal action you can do in any moment. And if any of the listeners or watchers have HPV and cervical dysplasia, that interaction will allow that intuition or that inner knowing of what to do next for yourself to bubble up, because the cervix will communicate to you. You'll have thoughts or feelings or visions like, oh, this needs to change, or I need to do this. And when we are connected in that way, deeply embodied in our cervix, taking a seat in our cervix, it's the cervix that's communicating to us. And then the other thing to do on a physical level is to begin a cervical self-touch practice. And this is not masturbation. We're not pleasuring ourselves. This is not checking cervical fluid for, fertility awareness-based methods of birth control. This is just for the sole purpose of connection. Because if you think, like, how many lovers have touched your cervix? How many doctors? How many nurse practitioners? Like, how many other humans have touched your cervix? And have you ever touched your cervix with your own hands? And oftentimes we might have shame around even sticking our fingers in our own vaginal canal, and like, especially going so deep as a cervix, like, oh my gosh, who am I to do that? But these stories that we have and these feelings that we have about our own body can be worked through as we move to the place of touching our own cervix. And I have had clients who couldn't even put their fingers in themselves. So we just started with like placing your hand like over the vaginal opening, and like, what is that like for you? And breathe and hold and touch. But then over time, when you begin to just gently touch the cervix, it can be just for like 3 or 5 seconds. It doesn't have to be this like long drawn out thing. But when you do this over time, we are creating a mind-body connection to this place in our pelvis that nothing else does. I mean, you can use like a rose quartz wand if you'd like a crystal wand, but there's something about using your own hands. When you imbue your hands with love and you touch your own cervix. I mean, and some people say, oh, I can't reach, or it's too far up there. We do have different anatomies. Some people have short fingers, some people have long vaginal canals, but different times of the month, your cervix is in different places of your vaginal canal. You can also squat and like kind of like bear down, like push your abdominal muscles down to like push the uterus down, which pushes the cervix down. Just start to explore your body, and explore to see if you can feel your cervix. If you don't know what your cervix feels like your vaginal walls tend to feel like the inside of your cheeks, and the cervix is more smooth and firmer. So like the tip of your nose, but it's very smooth. So you just have to explore. You just have to like feel around in there and make sure you trim your nails. Cervix doesn't like to be pricked, but cervical self-touch is the number one practice I invite all my clients, anybody who is in any of my programs. That is something that we do, because that cultivating that mind-body connection helps unlock the stories that are there, helps allow the cervix to feel safe to express itself. And I tell everybody that if you feel like you need to cry or wail or scream or emote in any way when you are touching your cervix, let it come out, because that is the cervix releasing and expressing and healing itself. So embodiment through awareness and cervical self-touch are two invitations I have.
Thank you for that. You posted something that was talking about touching your cervix not too long ago, and I actually did it. And it was really interesting because I had never touched it before. And I just think just like you said, it's so empowering to just get more familiar with your body and to know what's inside of you, to just like know yourself more. And I also wanted to add that I think Chloe might have been the one to introduce me to this, but it's kind of like a pink donut, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 So
It's little. It's like this big. It's like not very big at all. Yeah.
Awesome. And like from a more like esoteric perspective, the cervix is like it's like the gateway between worlds, right? Because like you're bringing a new soul in, like if you're giving birth, you're bringing a new soul into form, and that is the canal that they travel through to come into the physical world and have their first breath. So there's something really magical and special about it from that perspective too.
Yeah, the cervix is a beautiful portal that holds the codes of life, death, and rebirth. I mean, not only is it the canal through which babies are born through, but it's the canal through which semen enters in through for conception. It's also the canal through which menstrual blood flows out of, the death of the potential out of the womb. It's the canal through which abortion blood flows out of, miscarriage blood. So the cervix really holds the keys of being this doorway through which the entirety of the life, death, birth continuum flows through. And I think that is like, we hold the power of the universe just in this one beautiful little pink donut.
That's really beautiful. What else was I going to say? So many thoughts constantly when you're talking. I love talking about all of this with you. And I'm so grateful to talk about this more. So I just was like feeling like cervix is like a gatekeeper of sorts, and that just feels very like powerful and like honorable in a way, for lack of better words. It feels like a very powerful, honoring gateway and gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's really what it is. Like I say, it's I mean, we could have a whole other, hour plus long conversation on just the energetics of the cervix and what that means, and what that means for the female body, and the cervix being this, like I said, the keeper of this very powerful force that is seen in the likes of black holes in the universe. And it's really it's like an interdimensional doorway where like there's the barrier between our inner world and the outer world, and it's like the in between these two places. So yeah, for all the listeners, if you want to like dive deeper into the profound energetics of the cervix, I definitely invite you to check out like what I have to offer, because like I said, that this conversation is big and it's deep, and we could go on for many hours talking about what this means for our life, for our body. But know that you hold these very powerful codes within your body, and it once we tap into it and acknowledge it within our body, can create an experience in our body that is unmatched by anything else. When I have unlocked these energies from within me and acknowledging this doorway between my inner world and outer world, miracles have happened in my life that wouldn't have been possible elsewise. So know that when you embody your cervix and you touch your cervix, that you're touching into something very sacred, something very powerful, something very profound that has, I think, been purposefully repressed because of the power that it holds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure almost every other speaker that is on this summit would probably agree with you about that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, I already feel so much more connected to my cervix and in reverence to it, and really inspired to begin cultivating a more conscious, deeper connection with it. So thank you so much for being the embodiment that you are.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for having me. I'm here to be a voice for the cervix, and because I want all of us to feel this. And if I can transmit these frequencies to you through this video, then my job is done. Yes,
It is.
yes.
You definitely are a voice for the cervix. Okay, so before we wrap up, if you would like to share a little bit about some of your offerings for anybody interested in, maybe working with you or following some of your work more, I'd love for you to share what you've got going on right now.
Sure. So I have several online courses. One, if you have HPV and cervical dysplasia, I have one called the Cervical Wellness Online Masterclass Series, and that really explains everything that you need to know about how to reverse this diagnosis on your own, as well as just connect to your cervix in a deeply profound way. I've had many women who don't have diagnoses do this course with me, and that will be open for enrollment in August. Right now, I have a new 5-month training program called Vital Living, which is how to be your own health and wellness coach. Excuse me. And this touches on what we talked about in the beginning of this conversation about body sovereignty, and how do you learn how to read the signs of your body and take care of yourself, and how do you strategize your life so that you actually move forward and do the things that you want to do on behalf of yourself. And I'm feeling really, really excited about this, because you don't have to have an HPV or cervical dysplasia diagnosis for this. But what I do talk about is how I've basically taken what I do with HPV and cervical dysplasia and like extrapolated it out so that you can really use it for anything that's happening in your body. I do one-on-one consultations, so people who just really want some advice or want to know what to do now they have this diagnosis. I don't know how to help myself. I do one-on-one consultations, and I have a lot of free resources too. You know, find me on Instagram at Cervical Wellness, or my website is cervicalwellness.com, and I have YouTube videos. I have free webinar trainings. I have, I have a book out. I should have said that. I don't have it near me, but I have a published book called Informed, Aware, Empowered, a self-guided journey to clear PAPs that you can buy on Amazon. And that really just explains, if you have HPV and cervical dysplasia, how can you heal yourself? So I have lots of avenues that, like, from different price points or free, that you can find me. And I offer lots of free content on Instagram, so find me there.
You do offer a lot of free content, and I just want to say, I'm so excited about Vital Living. That looks so awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really stoked about this. I feel like this is cervical wellness, and HPV and cervical dysplasia has been like my doorway to this, but I'm really feeling fired up about just empowering all people with their bodies and their health. So yeah, I'm very excited.
You are a very powerful force of that voice of body sovereignty. And I just want to add one more thing. If you follow her on Instagram, or you check her out and you see just how clear and on point and inspired Denell's content is, just like continuously flowing out of her, I just look at that as an example of what's possible for everyone when they not only heal their cervix, but like the whole well-being. That's what is possible for everyone.
Yeah. Yes, it is. We are all generative, amazing humans. So, and whatever theme or subject you're inspired by, may it be so.
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. That feels like a good interview to me. How about you?
Yeah, that feels wonderful. Thank you, Angel.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to share this space with you.
Me too. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Yeah, you too. I'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
Aloha.
Aloha. Bye.